And Tolkien based his elves off of, it's a blend of Norse with some like kind of things hitting at Celtism and all sorts of other things. A lot of stuff that has to do with the cultures in modern day Finland and in the Finnish language, which is over my head completely. But yeah, his version of elves is not what we think of really in other fantasy novels today. They've really changed that. So, anyways, the Avari, they basically leave them aside for now. They're not really relevant for 99% of Tolkien's work. There are a few Avari that like are kind of famous, but they're not really present, really. The Eldar, they're at the front stage. For the Eldar, there's three Sunderings that are important. There's the Vanyar, the Noldor, and the Teleri. Basically, to brutally summarize, the Vanyar, they are like the first ones to make the journey. They go to the Undying Lands. The Noldor are the second
They
ones.
you could call them the most eager of the lot.
Yeah. The Vanyar and the Noldor, they all heed the call and they go to the Undying Lands. The Teleri don't all heed the call. Actually, the majority don't. Some of them do heed the call. They're called the Famari, and they're kind of like a seafaring type of elf people that live on this kind of little special island and on the mainland of the Undying Lands. Uh, let's put aside the Noldor and the Vanya for now because the Teleri are kind of more important. Those of the Teleri that decide to stay back, they end up forming other groups and other groups. There's the Sindar and the Nandor, who will become eventually in the Third Age the Sylvian elves and the Lakandi. So we're talking like Legolas's, the Mirkwood Forest elves and stuff. Of the Sindar, there's the Aethrim, the Falachim, and the Elves and Mithim, and it gets much more confusing because this goes into the Second Age and the Third Ages, but more or less the elves of Lothlorien and Mirkwood are all kind of the descendants of these ones.
So they
With
descend from the
Noldor,
Teleri.
yes. And one thing that I'll note to the audience that many people might not know, because I had to do extensive information on the military aspect of Tolkien's every faction in Tolkien's world. Tolkien had this very weird thing where every time he sunders all the races, and all the races have their sunderings, like they're almost identical. When you look at men have the houses of men. There's the elves that we're showing here. For the dwarfs, there's the houses of the dwarfs, although we don't know much about most of them. Every time there's a sundering, these groups of elves or men or dwarfs, whatever it might be, have unique preferences culturally, and this has to do with their weapons. So it's interesting. Tolkien just randomly writes the Vanyar, they like spears. The Noldor, they like swords. The Teleri, they like bows. The same thing with
Hmm.
the houses of men.
Uh,
You find this, yeah.
I guess it's kind of like makes sense, right? Because Legolas is not good with a sword.
Yeah. And the Nandor are good with axes. So yeah, there are elves who use axes. That's another thing. And elves hunt and eat meat. That's something a lot of people find bizarre. It seems like they appear like they're vegetarians or not.
Yeah, but I think that makes sense, right? Because when you see like in the start of the Fellowship in the War of the Last Alliance, where you see the half of the the High Elf army, they have those double pole arms, and I guess that's the mostly the uh, Vanyar elves that we would see. Like at least those they were the guys in the front line, and later when in the cinematics where we see Sauron appear, you could see several elves with swords and shields. So I guess they would be the Noldor.
And the Vanya are only, to my knowledge, they only come to Middle Earth in the War of Wrath. They never come back. So the Vanyar are almost not existent. They're not present. The Noldar are some of the most present aside from the Teleri. And of the Noldar, there is a further sundering. There are the Noldar in exile and the Noldar that stay in Aman.
Oh, I think now, Greg, since I guess since we if we're finished with this, like the Sundering of the Elves, I think we should talk about the real villain of the first stage.
Okay, here. So let me just stop sharing.
You
Sorry,
want me
it's yeah,
to
the
bring up?
interface for Riverside is different. Okay, there we go.
You want me to get the image up?
Yeah, sure. You can use whatever image you like.
Right. Yep, we have him.
Oh, so you want to talk about Fanor?
Yeah, like as you also described it, he's like a real villain.
So I want to start off by saying this is something that I think people will find interesting. Tolkien believe well, maybe that's it's too harsh to say this. Tolkien's work presents evil being real. There is evil and there is good. So it's not a gray world like all of our literature and all of our movies and stories today always seems to have this motivation for why a good person becomes evil, whatever. There is just evil and such. Feanor represents what was good but becomes evil. So I guess he does fit modern contemporary stuff. But Feanor is a group of evil beings in Tolkien's Legendarium. He's alongside Saruman, Melkor, Sauron. And Feanor is one of the OG, like the original evils. So people find that interesting, but I mean, if you read into him, it's quite obvious. He's like a fallen angel type.
But I think like if you were to even attribute some characteristic or trait onto what causes it, it's pride of
But
Valinor.
He is Melkor. He's the
Yeah.
first. He's the greatest amongst his group of the Noldor. And when he feels threatened by his brother Fingolfin, who he thinks might usurp him, ironically because Melkor is lying to him and giving this idea, he becomes jealous, and this leads to rage, and he wants to prove himself. So he is just the elven version of Melkor in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Also, daddy issues again.
Yeah, no, that's it. He fears that when his dad, who's Finwë, will be gone, that he'll be usurped by Fingolfin, and this is all lies, of course, that Melkor, spread into him.
And
But
but
yeah,
it's actually kind of true because it is known that even when the Noldor were in Valinor, a lot of them they respected Feanor, but it is kind of like that respect that you would put for someone having power or an accomplishment, but you would call him a respected leader by the masses of the Nold.
I mean, until his actions, yeah, of course. But he's famously the one who creates the Cimmerals, and this is his downfall because he creates something that consumes him. And it's just this kind of repetition of the same story with Melkor. Melkor his obsession is to basically destroy all that was made from the music so that his music can take over, and Feanor makes something that he thinks is just perfection and it should outshine. There you go,
The
shine
trees.
everything. Yes, exactly. So that's kind
And
of this poetic rhythm to it.
and it's said that no one even amongst the Valar could even craft something as perfect. And it was said even Feanor himself, he knew like he doesn't know how it really came to being that he was able to craft these magnificent jewels. But it could never be done. And Melkor obviously wanted this. And well, he has a great ally in Ungoliath.
We'll get to her in a bit, yeah. But
Yeah,
just to
but yeah,
explain the story a little bit,
yeah,
Melkor ironically becomes obsessed with the Cimmerals also. So, like you said, he ends up killing Feanor's father and he steals the Cimmerals. And Feanor then decides that, well, he takes command of the Noldor because he is, the next in line, which it's kind of like, his entire fear, it's re-justifying his own perception of what was going on, and that, he has to seize the initiative. But what he does is he takes an oath and he places it upon all of his children, his 7 sons. And while this is an oath of getting revenge, in essence it's actually a curse upon him and all of his sons. So basically what the oath is, to brutally summarize, is they're going to get back the Cimmerals after they get rid of Morgoth. And
yeah. This is I think where after the heist he renames Melkor to Morgoth.
yeah. And this leads him, to do what is the rebellion. They go against the Valar by leaving Aman, and in doing so, they kill their brethren. It's actually
Yeah, I have a picture. This is like the first kinslaying.
the first kinslaying of the Teleri Elves, who are less armed than the Noldor, so they get pretty screwed up. So to steal their ships, because they're the only ones with the ships to get over to Middle Earth. And this
Can I
is like,
just point out one thing about Feanor's, like, the fact that he's so proud that he's blinded to any form of sense
yeah,
when because what call like after the heist, right? Which Melkor took here with Ungoliath, and Melkor also destroyed the trees. So at this time, it was known as the Year of the Trees, where there were like these two great trees that gave the light. Right, this is
Yeah.
before the sun existed,
Yeah.
the sun and the moon. So, but the Silmarils had the light of the trees, and Varda asked for permission if she can take them so that she can recreate the light.
Yeah.
And
To
he just
recreate the
said
trees.
no.
Yeah.
And he said, no, you are like Melkor.